Well, Michael, you may have thought recently we'd hit peak musical biopic, or artist biopic, with the Bob Marley and
Yeah.
Elvis, Bohemian Rhapsody, etc. Michael Jackson has a biopic coming out. Well, he doesn't, sorry. There's a biopic about Michael Jackson. Of course, he's dead.
Yes.
But you would be wrong if you think we've hit peak musical biopic, because Sam Mendes is to direct 4 separate Beatles movies on Paul McCartney, John Lennon, George Harrison, and the other one. I forget what he's called. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. Obviously, one of the big problems with Bohemian Rhapsody is they had to do all sorts of weird editing because every single person wanted equal time. This way, they don't have to worry about that at all because they could just have the same movie, but each time only one of the Beatles is in shot. So it allows them to avoid that Oscar-winning best editing for that was with Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yeah, I mean, look, I know the Beatles are important, but do I really want to see a biopic about, like, George Harrison? Like, I'm sorry, no. John Lennon and Paul McCartney, yeah. George Harrison, probably not. And then the other one, yeah, I don't think so.
Just about like narrating Thomas the Tank Engine.
Great. Fantastic.
Hello and welcome to Select and Reflect, the movie review podcast where we look at films that have come out in the near and distant past. We give them a couple of watches and evaluate them beyond first impressions. I'm your host, Michael, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, Luke. And this week we are celebrating the Oscars, as we have been recently, and as we will continue to be doing going forward, by looking at the films that were nominated for Best Picture at last year's Oscars. And we're going to be looking this week at Top Gun Maverick. So Luke, why don't you tell us a thing or two about Top Gun Maverick?
Yeah, sure thing, Michael. So Top Gun Maverick, of course, is the sequel to Top Gun, which came out in 1986. I'm not sure if the original Top Gun was nominated for Best Picture at the Oscars.
What I enjoy, by the way, is that I don't think it would have been, but what I enjoy is that last week we looked at Avatar 2, and you were like, it was released 13 years, a sequel 13 years later. Well, this has got that beat by quite a bit.
Yeah, but there's a difference though.
Yeah, this is a classic belated sequel.
This is what is called a legacy sequel.
Yes.
While Avatar 2, The Way of Water, is very firmly positioned as just like a sequel. There is a difference, I guess.
Yeah, I didn't actually know that term, legacy sequel, but I think it is a good term to describe a lot of what we're seeing with Hollywood cannibalizing itself.
Yeah. Again, like Avatar 2 feels like a natural follow-on from the first Avatar. It's just, of course, a lot later for some reason. If Avatar 2 was released, 3 years after the first one, that would feel normal. This, however, well, I guess because 16 years have passed in the World of Pandora, so whatever. But I still think it would feel relatively normal. This, though,
I
of
get
course,
you.
if this was released in 1989, you'd be like, why the fuck does Tom Cruise look so old? Instead of
Yes.
why the fuck does Tom Cruise look so young, even though he's like 80, which is people's reactions watching this movie. So Top Gun Maverick is a 2022 American action drama film directed by Joseph Kosinski and written by Ehren Kruger, Eric Warren Singer, and Christopher McQueen. From the stories by Peter Craig and Justin Marks. There you go. A lot of people got their name on this, apparently. I've seen so many people attached. So it's, of course, based on the characters by Jim Cash and Jack Epps Jr., who wrote Top Gun in the original. Of course, it stars Tom Cruise, Miles Teller, Jennifer Connelly, John Hamm, Glenn Powell, Ed Harris, and Val Kilmer. It was released on May the 27th, 2022 in the United States. And you know what day that was, Michael?
What was it, the anniversary of when the original was released or something?
No, it was Memorial Day weekend.
Okay, that makes sense, yes.
So, it was released on May the 27th, 2022, because, it was a military holiday weekend, and this is about the military and how good the US military is. And that's why, I liked it. No, so what is the budget for Top Gun Maverick, Michael?
I'm going to go for 80 million. I don't know if that's... I feel like maybe that's too low, but I think 80 million seems...
Oh, okay. Wow. Why would you go so low?
Low, you know what? Yeah, I was thinking it's probably low. My logic with thinking it was, 80 million is I was like, well, that's still quite a bit.
Tom Cruise wouldn't get paid a lot for a movie like this, would he? Yeah, that was your logic.
Yeah, well, I was thinking because he was passionate about the story, so he didn't really care about the paycheck.
All the stunts and hiring out the jets from the US military, that wouldn't have cost anything.
I was thinking they were getting it for free because they were encouraging people to join the military. I thought everything through, Luke.
Could you have another guess?
Okay, so I don't know, 100. I'll go for double as much, 160 million.
Close, 170 to 177. So there you go. You put your thinking cap on, and you got a lot closer. You should probably do that more often, Michael. What about the box office?
No, I think this movie made at least 300 million. No, I don't know. So I think this movie was a big success. That is my understanding.
Do you remember the story I told you about? Did I tell you the story about Spielberg saying to Tom Cruise, "You've saved movies"?
Yeah. I definitely heard that. So I think you told me it. I don't know who else I would have heard it from. No, yeah. I mean, I have a very related, very similar story about, this movie getting some attention, which is that one time this woman posted on Twitter about she had her son was in the military, and she was like, I just went to see Top Gun. It was really good. Here's a picture of my son in the military. And her son was quite an attractive guy. He was attractive enough that he could have been one of the male leads or, male stars in this film. That's the kind of attractive level we're dealing with. And I remember a woman commented where's he stationed? I need my pussy ate. and the woman responded excuse, really offended. And I don't know why I was actually looking for that tweet because I was like, that's
okay.
I found it funny. Anyway, so I'm going to go for...
You better not guess lower.
Well, you know what? It's interesting. I think I'm
You started with an 8 there.
So, yes, I did say an 8. I think I'm potentially risking guessing too low. I guess this must have broken $1 billion. So I guess I'll go for, I don't know, 1.2 billion.
You still guess lower. It's 1.496, so $1.5 billion. Again,
wow. That's a lot of money.
I can't believe you, man. I helped you. I tipped you off. I'm like, please don't go low.
Don't worry. See, technically, if I would have gone for 800 million, I would have been just over half.
I think
I would have only been 700 million off.
We made a rule that if you're 500 million off, you get an X. Yeah. Honestly, I you know what? I might, if I was feeling, in a bad mood, I would have given you a double, X for guessing less than half of the budget and half of the box office. But anyway, Michael, of course, this was also nominated for an Oscar at last year's Academy Awards.
Just any old Oscar.
Did it? Yeah, Best Picture. Of course, since, this movie made so much money, was nominated for Best Picture. Surely you liked it, right?
I did, is what I was going to say. I was going to do a bit of a lead in there, but then I realized I'd started with the word I, so, I didn't know how to end other than I did. I think this is a very much an example of a movie where, there was an obvious thing that it would have been and that it should have been, and it was that. Obviously,
that's a good way of putting it.
Yes, I think there's not really anything I would have expected more from this movie, but in a very good way, because obviously you could say, well, the movie's predictable, blah, blah, blah. But no, I think the movie was within the parameters of what you'd expect, but it did a really good job within those parameters. I think basically, obviously it's an action movie, it's kind of a feel-good movie, it's got some emotional moments.
Is it a feel-good movie?
Well, it's a feel-good movie because I felt really good that they were able to avoid blaming a specific country, and they decided to just have some completely non-specified bad guys who somehow have the capacity of an industrialized nation. That was fun. I mean, look, there's things. I think there are criticisms I will have of this movie, but at the same time, I would not have really wanted anything else or expect. I would there could have been other things that would have happened, and in some sense that might have made the movie technically better, but I would have been disappointed because it wouldn't have been what I was expecting.
I'm not sure about that last part, because I'm always happy for movies to be better.
No, I disliked The Last Jedi, and therefore I refuse to ever have any of my expectations of a movie subverted in any way.
But the thing is, you said, of course, feel good, and I kind of mockingly said, "Oh, is it feel good?" And I said it like that because, of course, it's a feel good movie. This is the most feel good movie you could possibly have. Even in the original Top Gun, there's the tragic death of Goose. Nobody dies in this.
Yeah, I was thinking that. Yeah, this. I mean, I guess that's the funny thing, and obviously we'll probably get into this. It's almost like this movie. There's a naivete about how much they refuse to entertain the possibility that people can actually die.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, you're going on this super impossible, difficult mission against these, terrible people, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, hold on a minute, are you suggesting that you're willing for people to die on this mission?
Nobody can die. It's too feel good. Everything's too good. And the thing is,
this is war, sir. Nobody dies here.
Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film a rare A+ grade on a scale of A+ to F. And that right there is the biggest indication that this was a crowd pleaser. This is a favorite amongst moviegoers, a feel good movie, but it is predictable. I was thinking while watching it, it's like, yeah, all the beats are hit in what would I expect going into Top Gun Maverick? I would expect, of course, Goose's son Rooster to be in the movie somehow, and indeed he is in a role which is quite predictable. I would expect, of course, because Tom Cruise is so old, that would be a storyline. Is Pete Maverick Mitchell, past his sell-by date or not? Those things, of course, happened. But I do think there was some
and is he going to settle down with like marriage and stuff like that? Just to throw out an example for me.
Yeah, and I think there was some good, character development, some, good character. I guess introspection, particularly for Maverick. Which I enjoyed, although I do think Rooster's character could have been better. Honestly, I think they could have actually done a lot more than they did. But yeah, it hit all the beats, and then at the end, of course, you have this big mission that the movie's been building up to, and then what I did like was, well, I'm not sure if I liked it. I was just kind of surprised, not in the moment, but I thought up until they get in the old, I think it's the F-14, which Maverick, of course, flew in the first Top Gun in 1986. And him and Rooster escaping that right at the end of the movie. Before that happens at the end of the movie, I was like, oh yeah, this is all pretty predictable. Rooster gets his life saved by Maverick. Maverick saves Rooster's life, etc. And then, right at the end of the movie, it's like, oh, okay, now they're going to be they're stealing a jet from the enemy. Okay, that's different. So that's the one moment where I was like, okay, this is different to what I was expecting. But yeah, it's fine if the movie is predictable. But again, I'm not somebody who gets swept along with crowd pleasers a lot. I don't know if you are, Michael. If you'd say
you are soulless.
Yeah, exactly. I'm
I liked Green Book.
That's the problem with being someone who has to critically think about movies like we do, or we aim to do at least.
Well, I don't even think about how much money they made. So
that's the thing. So you can't get swept along with it. But I can imagine absolutely if you were seeing this in a theatre, like many people probably did get swept along with it. I'm not all the way there, but I am a good way there with this movie. Anyway, Michael, how many nitpicks do you have?
I have one.
Okay, I have two. So I guess I'll go first. My first nitpick is there is no homoerotic volleyball scene, and instead it's replaced by a football scene, which you may...
I wrote down something about the football team.
Oh, the football.
Yeah,
the football scene. The thing is, of course, you may think, oh, it's similar to the volleyball scene. But it's not similar because...
But there's a woman involved.
Yeah, again, there is a woman.
They ruined it.
What's going on there?
Yeah,
Why?
I'm sorry, a woman, that's so gay.
Why? Well, no, it's the opposite, Michael. We want to see just men. Just sweaty men working out, playing with the boys.
Just guys being bros.
Yeah, guys playing with the boys, and very, very slow, erotic shots, some may say, of toned, fit young men. The point is that the way the volleyball scene is shot, the people involved, the music, it's very different to the American football scene. And of course, what is the point of the football scene in this movie?
It's that he's like making them a team. Exactly.
And what was the point of the volleyball scene in the original Top Gun?
That America is gay.
Yeah. The point was you're just playing with the boys. It wasn't. It wasn't for teamwork. It was just playing with the.
There was no plot point to it, which made it better.
Yeah, exactly. We're just having fun playing volleyball. Oh,
yeah.
Look at those abs. Oh, no, there's no we're doing this for teamwork. No, none of that. It's
like when if you find out that you're like, let's say one of your favorite porn stars is actually gay for pay. It's like I thought he was in it for the sheer love of man-on-man action.
Yeah.
But obviously then you find out, no, he's actually a straight guy and he's just doing it because, some producer told him he had a nice body and he could make some money in the industry. It poisons it.
Yeah, exactly. There is a purity with the volleyball scene that this movie tries to replicate, but it can't. And if you're not going to replicate it, just don't bother. Honestly, just don't, because it's like it kind of looks similar, but it's not. And that's the nitpick. Anyway, give me one of your nitpicks, Mike.
He gets thrown overboard at the bar, but and even though the bar's like by the sea, he doesn't get thrown in the water. That would actually hurt less, right? Like being thrown onto the sand from a distance, like that could hurt you seriously. Whereas being thrown in the water, that's like a fun prank. So I just felt like it would have been better, especially, and again, it's called being thrown overboard. Obviously, that's being thrown out of a boat. It would just make so much more sense if the bar was by the sea and they.
Well, I mean, I don't think it can be right by the sea.
Yeah, I guess just like let's say a stone's throw or a cruise throw.
It was I would say it's a stone's throw. Like, there's got to be some separation between.
I guess. Yeah, I suppose you're right. Yeah, you can throw a stone pretty far, but no, yeah, I just think I would have preferred it. All I'm saying is I would have preferred it if the whole being thrown overboard thing, which I believe happens because he can't afford to pay the tab. I just wish that involved being thrown in the water.
Yeah, and these men can definitely throw a stone pretty far. You know? So yeah, well, definitely a stone's throw. Yeah. Also, my next nitpick is about Rooster. And it's not to do with his character, which again I think could have been better, and that's a more serious point. But his name is Bradley Bradshaw. Now, look. Some names are weird, but that just you get to create this name, right? You're not fucking
it's not Lenny Leonard. This isn't Carl Carlson.
Yeah, exactly. You're not this isn't someone who's real. Okay, you can. Why did they call him Bradley Bradshaw? I don't understand that. Also, he has a mustache just like his dad because Goose had a mustache in the first movie, so let's give this guy a mustache. Why people don't often have the same facial hair as their dead fathers. I don't think so. Yeah,
not in my experience.
Yeah, so I just think that's that's going too far really with trying to make him look similar to Goose. It just didn't need to happen. Anyway, so shall we get into the plot, Michael, on Top Gun Maverick?
Yeah, let's do that, Luke.
Okay, so after more than 30 years of service as one of the Navy's top aviators, Pete Maverick Mitchell is where he belongs, pushing the envelope as a courageous test pilot and dodging the advancement in rank that would ground him. The story involves Maverick confronting his past while training a group of younger Top Gun graduates. It's a feel-good, old-school movie. It's got a lot of sincerity in it and a healthy dollop of US military propaganda.
As all things should.
Yeah, in terms of the vibe of the movie, they just don't make movies like this anymore. That's what I was thinking. It was there's a few moments of kind of comedy and insincerity, but they're very limited. And I don't know, I feel like in action movies, do you know what I mean by sincerity, Michael? In big, like Avatar last week, that was very sincere, and that grossed 2.3 billion. This grossed 1.5 billion. I think often Marvel movies, for instance, are criticized for being insincere.
Well, that just happened.
Yeah, exactly, and the same with the modern Star Wars movies. But yeah, this was for the most part.
It was
sincere.
Earnest.
Yeah, earnest, sincere, serious. So yeah,
and
I think
the importance of being earnest, I think, is what this shows.
And the vibe is, of course, helpful, and I think that's why it got an A+, right, on that cinema score thing. Audiences do like it when movies take themselves seriously. It gets them invested. So yeah, go on.
I was just going to say, it's, again, like I kind of already said, movies need to own what they are, and I think this movie definitely does own what it is, in a way where I guess, because that's the thing, obviously with the Marvel stuff, it's we own what we are by being insincere. It's we know we're just a goofy, silly film about space wizards and stuff. It doesn't, being self-deprecating isn't cool if you're only being self-deprecating because actually you're insecure. That's what I'm saying. So I'm saying this movie is confident, and I like that. Yeah, no,
I think that's a good point. Obviously back to the plot, it does follow these predictable steps that you'd expect. Yes, they do work. You said right at the start, of course, that you got what you expected, right?
Yes.
Out of this movie. And yeah, I was thinking that it's the steps that are taken are, if I was thinking of a Top Gun Legacy sequel set, of course, in 2022, yeah, these are the steps that I would take. And yeah, I think, therefore, you have to, because the plot is predictable, you have to really make it about the characters. And I think, there's a lot of focus on Maverick, and I think they do a good job with his, character. But yeah, again, not with Rooster's character, which I'll get into. I think that is something that, could have been better. And of course, we have to talk about how, I guess, there are special effects in this movie, I imagine. But of course, those were real planes in the movie, Michael. There wasn't any CGI with those planes. Those were real planes flying in the air. And I think Tom Cruise, again, one of the reasons why he was a producer is because he wanted to make sure that happened. You know,
yes.
He was like, it has to be real, it has to be authentic, and it's the same thing we talked about. I think what did we talk about this before?
Was this Nolan?
Yeah,
Christopher Nolan, Oppenheimer?
Perhaps with Oppenheimer.
Because I know that he's wild about his special effects, or like practical effects.
Yeah, exactly. CGI has gone so far, it's like, okay, if you actually make things practical, then audiences like that and they respond and they go to see it. Yeah.
I think to be fair, like my theory is that CGI isn't exactly of the devil in itself, and there is an artistry to CGI done well. The issue is, I think, twofold. One,
we saw it last week.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, one is that, like you say, CGI often is seen as a cheaper way of doing things, which then leads them to try and make it cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And of course, CGI is negatively affected by spending less money on it. At the end of the day, if you get an actual plane, you've got an actual plane. If you've got a CGI plane, then you've got a producer saying, let's not pay the people as much, or let's give them less time to do it, blah, blah, blah. And the other thing is, I think it speaks to the passion for filmmaking. Like, if someone's going to go to the effort of getting a real plane so they can film a real plane, that shows a passion for the movie, and that's likely to translate for the movie being good. Whereas obviously if someone's just like, we'll just load up stock plane image in the computer, it's much less likely that there is actual sincere enthusiasm for the film. So yeah, I would say that by association, when you have less CGI, that tends to indicate the movie is likely to be better.
Yeah, no, I think that is a good point. Yeah, and I think audiences have kind of subconsciously acknowledged that. Yeah, and that's why, of course, these movies are grossing a lot of money. But also, if you do CGI really well, like Avatar, they go to see it. But basically, if your movie takes pride in how good it looks, in one way or another, if it's pushing the boundaries like Tom Cruise does, of course, in this movie and in the last Mission Impossible movie didn't do well. I think that's because it was just before Oppenheimer and Barbie. It was released, so yeah, I think that really screwed Dead Reckoning. But in general, his Mission Impossible movies do well because of that. And yeah, in this movie again, it's like real planes. I remember seeing the trailer for the first time, and it's like, wow, this looks really good. So yeah, I think that definitely makes a difference. So more than 30 years after graduating from Top Gun, we're getting into the script now, obviously. U.S. Navy Captain Pete Maverick Mitchell is a decorated test pilot. When Admiral Kane plans to cancel the hypersonic Dark Star program, Maverick is testing. On the grounds that it has not reached the contract specification of Mach 10, Maverick changes the target speed for that day's test to Mach 10 and commences the test early. During the test flight, Maverick successfully reaches Mach 10. However, the prototype aircraft is destroyed when Maverick cannot resist pushing the airspeed beyond Mach 10. So I just thought this was an unbelievably good start. It's like old school movie making again. What I mean by that is it's treating the moment with sincerity and seriousness as he goes to Mach 10. You know the stakes. We see it happen. It's just simple and effective. And for a lot of the movie, that is the case. It's simple and effective despite how good it looks. And I think that's key. I mean, did you like the first scene?
Yeah. Also, I mean, the other thing is it establishes that Tom Cruise or Maverick is I actually can't remember his real name. Isn't that hilarious? I just remember he's called Maverick. I would definitely something Mitchell, isn't it?
It's Pete.
Oh, is it Pete? You know what? Okay, yeah. Oh, yeah, because they say his romantic interest says that a few times. Like, see you later, Pete. Anyway.
And who was his romantic interest?
Sonia.
Sonia Bonpastor. No. It begins with a P as well.
Penelope.
Just shorten that.
Pen.
And then elongate it a bit.
Penny.
There we go.
Penny, like the pasta. Anyway, basically, Maverick, he establishes he's a good guy because, of course, the reason he does it is because otherwise the whole, what's it called, like faction or whatever of that military research will be shut down and everyone will lose their job. So he's like, I'm going to put my butt on the line so that you guys, can show that this works. And again, so he's doing it for selfless reasons, but then it also establishes the complexity of the fact that also he's in it for the kind of aggrandizement, the fact that, like you say, he can't stop himself. So it's introducing things about his character, and again, they're pretty obvious things to introduce about his character, like having the main character be a good guy is obviously not subversive, but again, you would expect in most movies the main character is going to be a good guy.
Well, yeah, I mean,
yes.
I expected you to say we know that because we've seen the original Top Gun.
That's true. Well, he did murder Goose in the
I don't
original.
think he murdered him.
I think he murdered him. No, yeah. But yeah, so I like it. And also, of course, like you say, it is exciting. There's a time element. Yeah, just like it's almost like it's not quite really, if we're being honest, on the level of a climax. But to start off so early with something so exciting of like a time element of the guy's going to be here, we've got to do this thing, blah blah blah, and then he pushes it, and the loud noises and all that kind of stuff and the visuals. To start off with that, I think you're like, yeah, okay, this movie is going to be a fun time.
Yeah, exactly. And also, of course, we already knew about Maverick because of Top Gun, and because maybe he's the main character in an action movie, so he's going to be a good guy, and he's going to take care of his people. But yeah, also, if you didn't know that or didn't suspect that, now you do. So it's a really good character introduction. And yeah, also we just at the start we get Danger Zone. Which
I mean, that's the one thing I didn't mention, which is when I was watching the movie at first, like I was thinking to myself, have I definitely clicked the right movie? Because of course it starts off with the very kind of like the title sequence that I don't know if it's actually literally the same title sequence as from the original Top Gun, but
it's very similar.
Feels like very very similar. Like you say, and obviously it's playing the same music, and I was like, no, okay, yeah,
but no, Take My Breath Away.
Which I didn't really like that song. So
no, Playing with the Boys.
Yeah, wasn't there like a third song they did? So Highway to the Danger was the third song, Playing with the Boys. I thought it was another song they did all the time, but I don't remember if that was Playing with the Boys.
Take my breath away. I just remember that every single time. Yeah. Tom Cruise has sex with what's she called? I can't remember what she's called. But anyway, it doesn't matter because she's not in this movie because she looks too old in real life. That actress. Yeah. So we have to get.
She hit the wall, I believe they call it.
Yeah. So we have to get Jennifer Connelly. What do you mean they call it?
The Red Pill community. I've got into this thing called the Manosphere. I've been watching this podcast called the At Whatever podcast.
Okay, so after the flight, Kane tells Maverick that he's cashing checks that his body can't cash. Now, what's that fucking thing that he says in the first movie? That guy, I can't remember.
Does he say your butt can't cash?
I'm not sure. No, I don't think he says that. Your body can't cash. That's it. Something. Anyway, look, the future is coming basically, and
well, they have the line about the AI. Kind of, I don't know. It's like, I guess it's more about drones. Like, hey, you dinosaur! Okay. In the future, we're not even going to need people to pilot these planes. You're a loser.
Just what I was about to say, obviously. But yeah, so obviously, Tom Cruise. Pete Maverick Mitchell is too old now. Apparently, he's still clinging on to his stardom as Tom Cruise. Pete Maverick Mitchell. And
eventually they're going to replace him with AI. They're going to replace him with exactly like it all works out.
But the thing is, it's the perfect idea for a legacy sequel to Top Gun, and we didn't really discuss this in the intro, but this is of course a theme that runs throughout. Is Tom Cruise too old? Is he
old hat?
Is he past his? You said that last week as well. Is he past his sell-by date? Because of course everyone remembers the glory days of the 80s when life was simple and fun and white and manly and gay. Yes. But now the world has changed. Yeah. And it's become less manly, less white, less gay in certain ways. I'm just thinking
nowadays it's not the good old fashioned gays. Nowadays you've got these newfangled gays
with the blue hair.
Twink death.
Yeah, with the blue hair. Yeah, that's the thing. Gays used to be like the people in Top Gun. Now they're twinks. Yeah. And that is not good. And life was so simple.
The femboys.
Yeah, life was simple back. Yeah, great. Life was simple back in the 80s, and that's when Tom Cruise was a cool, good-looking movie star. Yeah. Now he's old and the world's confusing, and less, less white. just less like the 80s in so many ways. And
let's be honest, what they really wanted to do was make a Top Gun gender and race swapped reboot. Like they did to Ghostbusters.
No, I know, but now, of course, the world has changed dramatically since the 80s, and of course, drones have become a legitimate weapon for the US military for almost 2 decades now. So do you need pilots? Does the world need Maverick? It is a perfect sequel idea. Like, it fits very well. Like, okay, you have this guy, he was a hero in the 80s before drones existed. Nowadays, he's still, this wannabe, hero pilot. But now, we have drones. Now he's not needed. And look, he's looking very old. He's not like 25 anymore. He's getting up there in age. So, yeah, and I think it fits in with, of course, there's this well, obviously there's this line, from Kane, where he says, "Your kind is headed for extinction." And Tom Cruise replies, "Maybe so, sir, not today." Because there is, I think, this meta aspect to the movie.
Yes.
Because there is this, of course, theme of, it's Pete Maverick Mitchell getting too old for this, and it turns out he's not. But also there's this meta aspect that maybe, boomers, which is, of course, I think the target demographic for this movie, of course, they grew up with Top Gun. That's probably a lot of their, favorite movies, obviously. Of course, movies like Top Gun aren't released today. And, movies released today are also, like, confusing and, like, black and female. And,
yeah. What is this Wakanda Forever I'm hearing everything about?
Yeah, and nothing appeals to them, They just want some good old US military propaganda dressed up, by Hollywood as a cool feel-good action movie, just like the old days and the heroes, two white guys, and this is what this movie gives them. And of course, just like Tom Cruise, the boomers proved at the box office, they're still number one, because of course this was the highest grossing movie of 2022. Tom Cruise proved he was still number one, the most famous person on the planet, still the most famous actor on the planet, still perhaps. Maybe, I don't know, there's a couple of contenders there. And yeah, obviously in the actual movie, Pete Maverick Mitchell proved he's still number one as well. Mm-hmm. He's still better than all the young guys. So yeah, there is this meta element as well with the people who wanted to go and see this movie, who liked this movie, putting it number one at the box office for weeks. It was like number one in the US box office for like 10 weeks or something. I don't know, it was crazy.
And I do agree that there is that meta aspect of, real movies are back. Obviously, like, what's his face said, Steven Spielberg, he saved the day in more ways than one.
And Spielberg is a boomer.
Yeah, exactly, yes. So he knows. I do agree. I did want to say one thing real quick. Is the whole Maverick thing, like the whole kind of, because, the Maverick thing of like, hey, this guy doesn't play by the rules, blah, blah, blah. It is such a cliche at this point. Do you think there is any sense in which this movie is so cliche that it does count against it? Because I think, and I wish I was offering I don't think I can offer a real hot take here, because my opinion is probably no, and I feel like that's probably the correct opinion. But what do you think?
No, it is cliche, right? Like we talked about the predictable steps the movie follows. Well, obviously, that right there is cliche.
Yeah.
Those are cliches. But the thing is, what I think is good is that there's real character. The movie cares about its characters. The movie cares particularly about Maverick. It cares a lot about him, and we do really get a lot of good scenes with him. Obviously the one with Val Kilmer. There we go, stands out. And yeah, we really care about him as a character. We really care about, I think, a lot. The pilots are in this, this program.
So a good way of putting it, perhaps, would be that it is cliche, but the cliches don't get in the way of characterization.
Yes.
So it's not like he's just a cliche.
Yeah, exactly. So you can, and that's what good movies used to be. Like the formula was cliche, but yeah, good character development. And that works, and audiences really like that because they like tropes, they like cliches, and they like good character development. And yeah, that's how part of the reason why you get an A star on Cinema Score. And yeah, obviously, just to go back to the whole boomer thing, the boomers aren't dead yet, and they proved it by putting this movie at 1.5 billion at the box office. When Ed Harris says, of course, hey, you're headed for extinction. I think, is Ed Harris the right guy to say that line?
Because he's so old.
Because he's old as well. It should have been like Zendaya saying that, Zendaya should have been the person.
It should have been Post Malone, and he should have dabbed.
No, Post Malone is a white man.
I see. Oh, I get what you're saying. Okay, yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, Zendaya, a young.
Yeah, it could have been I'm trying. Yeah, like Zendaya. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anyone who's even more like kind of subversive to boomers, and there should be in terms of actors.
Well, there is. Well, Zendaya is pretty. I'd say have you heard of Ayo Edebiri? The girl from the Bear, because you haven't seen The Bear. She is again black.
No, that's the show about the people who are like what's it called? It's like chefs, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's a really good show. And I think she's rumored to be she might appear in the next Pirates of the Caribbean movie, potentially. And again, that's another case of like, oh yeah, that used to be that was Johnny Depp. He was. I think she might be the main character. She might be a side character, but Johnny Depp, like he was the guy who was in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, the lead, and it might be this Ayo Edebiri. And yeah, that right there is again how things are changing. But in this movie, no, things we're going back to the old school. Yes, of course, there's a female pilot. in this, who's participating in this mission. And yes, some of them are black.
Yeah.
But crucially,
Yeah, but also like the women, she's kind of one of the guys, and that's important.
Yeah, but like it's a cool feel-good action movie with cliches and good character development, and the main characters, like even Jennifer Connelly's white. All the fucking Tom Cruise isn't dating Whoopi Goldberg, is he? No, he's not. So that's good.
Isn't dating Amy Schumer.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. Even though she is blonde and white, but yeah. That's the thing. So yeah, the boomers aren't dead yet. Like the Tom Cruise, these old dinosaurs, they're not extinct yet. Just like the people going to watch this movie, and just like Tom Cruise as well. And I think you can see that with the we talked a lot about race and gender, obviously, but I think that does matter in terms of how people perceive movies. And if people perceive movies as for them or not, or of course the older white demographic.
Yeah.
So
So if this came out like at the same time as Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, it would be like when Miami Dolphins went up against the Patriots in the Super Bowl.
Okay, maybe. I'm not really sure. Well, the Miami Dolphins never went up against the Patriots.
Wait, hold on. Who was? Oh, it's the Atlanta Falcons, right?
Yeah, because the Patriots and the Dolphins are in the same division. So
they're in the same. Yeah. Sorry,
play.
I was getting my southern teams confused.
So the Navy has been ordered to destroy an unsanctioned uranium enrichment plant before it becomes operational. The plant is located in an underground bunker. Now we're going to talk about the US military propaganda.
Boring.
Because the thing is, this has to be, I thought initially, Iran, but of course it is in a very snowy climate, and the thing is that Iran does have a lot of mountains.
Mountains cover a multitude of sins.
Yes, I think people say, oh, it can't be Iran. The thing is, it can be Iran because Iran actually has a lot of skiing, I believe, because it's so mountainous, and therefore of course it snows a lot. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it was Iran. The problem is that it's very close to the ocean. Is this valley?
Yeah, I feel like there's probably not that many logical places it could actually be.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If it was Iran, then I can believe it's Iran, but it's very close to the ocean. I mean, we don't really know how close it is to the ocean, but it seems like it's pretty close. And of course,
they measure it in minutes.
Yeah, and therefore, you wouldn't get snow that close to the coasts.
Yes, this is a true thing.
But in North Korea, for instance, it is a mountainous, country in certain areas. And
do we ever get a good read on the race of the bad guys?
Nope.
Or are they wearing those outfits so we can't see? Yeah, this is good. I like this.
This has been discussed a lot. Is it North Korea? Is it Iran? Is it Russia? No, I don't think.
I saw that it said they were a rogue nation, which is of course one of the Mission Impossible movies. My understanding there would mean that they're something a bit more like ISIS in terms of being some kind of separatist group not directly affiliated with any nation.
North Korea's been called a rogue nation before. Come on,
that's a good point. Yeah, axis of evil,
and so have Iran. Come on, let's be real. It's rogue. Oh, it's a rogue nation. Oh, so that means it's a country we don't like. Great. Wow.
Yeah, that's good.
The thing is that of course Russia have nuclear weapons, so it can't be Russia. Because
that's the thing. Obviously, the implication is it's a organization who
or
them
a country.
Getting nukes. Oh yeah, a country for whom them getting nukes is basically as good as game over, or it's a really serious problem if they even begin to get.
Yeah,
nukes.
Because of course it's a little line, but they violated a NATO treaty. Okay, so therefore, if they violated a NATO treaty, well, it can't be just a rogue country. A rogue organization. It has to be a country. It has to be a country like Iran, for instance. And of course, they have been accused of enriching uranium, Iran, and basically, well, I think that they had a deal with the US, and basically, of course, when Trump became president, they kind of they got rid of that deal
because it was a bozo deal, and it was the worst deal ever.
Yeah, so that's the thing, in terms of in real life, well, you got rid of the deal that said Iran can't enrich uranium. Okay, now they can enrich uranium. But the whole, in the mind of the US public, there's this thing about, Iran enriching uranium is bad. Whereas with North Korea, I think they may have already nuclear weapons. And of course, you can't do this to North Korea because North Korea are protected by China. So if you did this to North Korea, there would be massive consequences. You do this to Iran, they are not protected by China. You could get away with it, and therefore the country that they... Again, I don't think the movie specifically wants you to think, it's this country, but it has to be Iran. The only issue is the climate, but again, Iran is pretty mountainous.
They were cold.
Yeah, so it could have been in the winter. Maybe it gets snowy in the mountains around the coast in winter. But obviously, this is what is so good about this movie in terms of it being propaganda, because it's subconscious propaganda. It's not too obvious. You're not really focused on on the country that they're doing it to. You just want Pete Maverick Mitchell to complete the mission, and for Rooster to show everyone how good he is.
Yeah, honestly though, I would have liked it if, instead of having it so the country was ambiguous, it was just a really random country, and maybe just had a line where someone's like, "Oh yeah, there are enemies in this world." Just like we need you to take out Gabon are trying to enrich uranium or something. And it's like, damn Gabon, why does it always have to be Gabon? You're just like, okay, I guess in this universe. But no, yeah, I think I
love that if like the actors were saying that, looking at each other like, yeah, we have to say Gabon. Like, why does it have to be Gabon? Yeah, it's always Gabon, isn't it? Yeah, go on.
Yeah, Gabon. Or they could do a thing where it's like every single time they say the country, they're like covering their mouths, so it gets like dubbed in after the fact.
Well, that's what happened in the first movie. I swear, like lines were dubbed in.
Yeah, I think I've heard that. Yeah,
to stop them actually saying the country, which obviously was Russia. But
I wanted to say, like, I like how the fact that basically, I mean, it's not surprising, but this is basically the US just unilaterally acting with impunity in another country's airspace and literally bombing them.
Maybe this is why I say the US military is bad. Because it violated a NATO treaty. Does the NATO treaty give you permission to do this? I would think not. No. So you violated. Well, does the NATO treaty doesn't give you permission to do this? But in terms of international law, doing something like this is not allowed. I imagine the way to combat something like this would be sanctions.
Exactly.
Economic sanctions, not a military assault and killing. Obviously, that's the thing. I was because they're just blowing up a reactor. I'm like, oh, are they actually going to kill any enemy pilots? Yes, they do. They actually.
I like how there's no notion of this would be like a diplomatic incident that the US has just struck out against this country.
Yeah. Like, it's one thing blowing up you're killing enemy combatants. Like, now you've taken it up a level.
Yeah.
I just
it's basically like, it's the whole world police thing that the US has got going on, where it's just like, people will watch this and they'll just be like, yeah, obviously the US is just gonna, like, if they think a country's gonna be developing nuclear weapons and they shouldn't be, yeah, obviously the US is just gonna bomb them.
Yeah, and again, so this is why the propaganda is so good, because it's subconscious, because you're just thinking, oh yeah, it just seeps into your mind, and you don't really question what's actually happening. Wait, should they be doing this? No, that never enters into the discussion. So yeah, again, it's very different to Avatar 2 last week, obviously. Like, it's very funny. Like, these two movies, side by side, in terms of the amount they grossed, of course, is very similar. These big, massive blockbusters with very famous people either directing them or in the movie, both nominated for Best Picture, and one of them says, yes, the US military is A-OK. It's all good. You should like that these guys carry out these missions. They're brave, and patriotic. And Avatar 2 says, yeah, the US is like this imperial colonizing, I guess, evil empire, basically, in the form of the RDA, of course, because they can't actually say that. So Maverick then, of course, devises a plan employing 2 pairs of Super Hornets armed with laser-guided bombs. But instead of participating in the strike, he is to train an elite group of Top Gun graduates assembled by Air Boss Vice Admiral Bew Cyclone Simpson. They all come into this bar, of course, when Maverick's down at Top Gun again. And, Maverick, he feels old, of course. He's not even, flying on this mission, and even Jennifer Connelly looks younger than him. He's so old, and of course he gets thrown out of the bar, which is, again, I think quite symbolic, of course. You complain about that, but it's all the younger guys tossing him outside. But what
in the original movie they'd be tossing him off outside.
Exactly. But what keeps him, from, I guess, abandoning the project? Because as he's walking away or abandoning this mission, he sees Goose, of course, inside. Yes. So it's like,
Rooster. Yeah. Oh wait, sorry. He sees Goose, like a photo of him or something.
No, you're right. He sees Rooster, but
okay, good.
He thinks, of course, it's Goose. Well, he thinks to himself, oh, yeah, Goose. Yeah. No, I have a responsibility. So I can't therefore abandon, I can't feel like I'm too old, which is nice. I think that is quite symbolic. So I like that scene. But, it's an obvious thing to include Goose's son in the movie, of course. He has memories of his dad and would be, antagonistic towards Maverick. That all makes sense. And it seems simple. But I think, it's the obvious idea, right?
It's obvious, and you could say the fact it's obvious is like, it's not that creative, but again, this isn't the kind of movie where we're really going to begrudge that, so I think it works in terms of, introducing emotion. And also, it's kind of nice because it's like, if a character dies, it's always good to have a moment where, like, they've got some way that their legacy's carried on, and obviously having a kid who's basically a clone of you right down to the facial hair.
Yeah, that's a good point. Also, the kid is such a clone. He really likes Goodness Gracious, Great Balls of Fire.
I was thinking that too, actually. That's really funny.
Was that the other song you were thinking of, by the way?
I don't think it was, but
Gracious, Great Balls of Fire. The thing is, like, people nitpicked it saying, oh, would Goose's son play that? Or would a whole bar in the year 2022 like sing Goodness Gracious, Great Balls of Fire? Because, of course, it's a song from like 40 years ago.
It would in real America.
But the thing is, Goose, maybe he played that a lot. You know, he's been at that bar a lot. Maybe he played that a lot because that's his favorite song. So, you know, that's not a nitpick from me. I'm saying there's a reason why. That bar knows the lyrics and sings along with Goose. So Maverick, of course, dogfights his skeptical students and prevails in every contest. So now we get some good action here in the sky.
Getting smacked around by their grandpappy.
Yes, you don't count out Tom Cruise. And two of the students clash. Of course, Lieutenant Jake Hangman. Okay, this is one of the issues I have with this movie. Like, this right here, the dynamic is so obvious. It's like, oh, Hangman is too out there, while Rooster is too reserved. And I just think, you don't really need to make it that explicit. Hangman just says, oh, Rooster, that's your problem. You're not fast enough. It's like, there is some room for subtlety here. I don't know. That's what I think. I don't know. I just those scenes with them bantering back and forth, it just seemed too on the nose. It's like, okay, the writers want to communicate to the audience the differences between these two, but you make them too dimensional. I think.
I think I pretty much would just sign off on everything you said. I guess the only question I think is like, maybe on balance it still does end up being part of like the film's fun and charm. So it's kind of a situation where if we were looking for a perfect movie,
went too far.
It wouldn't be like that. But if you think it went too far, things I do quite like how much of a jerk that Glenn Powell character. What's his name? Saracen.
Yeah, but
Saracen.
It's Hangman.
Like
just call him Hangman.
Hangman. Yeah. Did they? Okay, hold on. You know what? At some point, one of them says, "Oh, do you know why we call him Hangman?"
Yeah.
Did I blink and miss this? Do they explain why?
Yes.
They call him Hangman? Okay, so I think I just like completely spaced out on that. What's the reason for calling him Hangman? Is it because he leaves you out hanging out to dry?
So you didn't space out on it at all.
So that is what they said. Okay,
yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah, I was just thinking. Okay, yeah. It was in recesses of my brain. I should say actually, I saw this movie before when I was in Canada, and I was on a bus, and the bus had like that Wi-Fi that sometimes public transport has, where you can like watch movies. This was like a bus from one city to another, and I was like, oh, Top Gun Maverick, I'll watch that. Basically.
Okay.
That's irrelevant. Anyway, more importantly, I do agree with you that it is dumb, but I guess what I'd say is I really do like when you have characters that are just like massive douches, especially if they're massive douches in a way where it's like they're just having fun with it.
Okay.
I do like that.
No, fair enough. Yeah, I think there's that, but it's just the dynamic is so, that it's too cliche. It's too poorly written for me. Anyway, so of course we've got to talk about the dogfighting. We've got to talk about the planes because this is why you have Tom Cruise and being a producer because we have some real like fighting with fighter jets and obviously I'm going to read this from Wikipedia now. To create an illusion that the actors were piloting jets during flying scenes, the producers paid the Navy $11,300 per flight hour for pilots to fly the jets. So there you go. That's a lot of money, isn't it, Michael?
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, for shots.
It must have cost them like in total, a couple of million for that.
The shots of I don't know how much it cost actually. Obviously, that they could have been flying around a lot because there's a lot of shots in this movie. Of course, planes flying around. For shots of the actors in flight, the F version was used with the actual pilot in the front seat, and of course, one of the jets was rigged with special cameras to film an actor in the back seat. Cruise designed a 3-month boot camp to train the actors with flying roles to get them used to the aerobatics and high G-forces, as well as build the spatial awareness they would need to operate the camera equipment. And I think Miles Teller threw up a number of times. I remember reading about. But Tom Cruise didn't. You know why? Because
he's a real man. He's a guy's guy.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. I remember that story of Miles Teller just saying, "Oh yeah, I threw up all the time," and he tells Tom Cruise, and Tom Cruise is like, "No, not me, because I'm special, because I've got that Scientology." Stuff. No, he didn't say Scientology, but Tom Cruise thinks he's special. He thinks he's a one of a kind, and I think he is, honestly.
Yeah.
No. So yeah, obviously, just to say, Michael, you appreciate the fact that these were real planes. Once again.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, obviously, I guess it also adds to the actors' performances.
Yeah.
They were behaving, real.
Yeah.
And I hope I hope it wasn't too difficult for them.
Yeah. So Maverick reveals that he promised Rooster's mother that he would not become a pilot. Rooster, unaware of the promise, angrily resents Maverick for blocking his naval application and blames him for his father's death. Maverick is reluctant to interfere with Rooster's career, but the alternative is to send him on a dangerous mission. So the thing is, okay, we're going to talk about Rooster now, and I, of course, have said this a few times, but I don't think this character is that good because, honestly, well, in terms of, I like the idea for the character, but like he could be angry. Like he kind of dislikes Tom Cruise, and then he gets angry, of course, when that girl obviously ejects, and Bob. Remember Bob? What a cool character he was. And and
Bob was such an interesting character.
And of course, yeah, I think that of course replicates what the accident that his father died in. So that's why he gets angry at Maverick. This dynamic between Maverick and Rooster could have been better. It could have been deeper. There could have been more scenes with them together. More scenes with them hashing it out. There's not enough scenes of them actually hashing it out. You know what I mean by that,
yeah,
Michael?
Getting down and dirty.
Yeah, like maybe it could have been a bit too melodramatic, but it doesn't need to be. Them like going at each other, and there wasn't a scene like that in the movie where I thought really fulfilled what I wanted to see out of these two characters. And again, I think the issue with Rooster is I just feel like he's a bit too two-dimensional. Like I don't know really why at the end of the movie he's like, oh yeah, no, I'm gonna be the best pilot ever, and I don't know how good a pilot he actually is. I don't know his flaws. Well, I know his flaws, but I don't know how good he is compared to the rest.
Yeah, he's only really defined with reference to his dad.
Yeah, and also,
which it's not good.
Also, I think there's this moment, of course, Maverick wants to protect Rooster. This is where the dynamic could have been better. Like he doesn't scold Rooster for dropping below 5,000 feet, of course, when they're right at the start of the movie. And I'm like, oh yeah, if you really wanted to protect him, you should like have a go at him and get angry at him, and then Rooster could fire back, and you could have a really nice dramatic scene. That's just not there. Again, I don't know. And this is
that. Yes, I do have opinions. So these are my opinions. I think one issue that hangs over all of this is, as far as I know, as far as I remember, Tom Cruise is not meaningfully responsible for Goose's death, and like basically, any more so than, well, he's just there when it happens.
Well, that can be,
and obviously
that can be part of it, though.
Well, yeah, that's what I was thinking. Well, look, so what I'm thinking is this. One, I think a reason perhaps why they couldn't have, or they didn't have, a big kind of proper hashing out of the beef between him and Tom Cruise is that insofar as they did hash it out, it would expose the fact that the Rooster's objection is kind of baseless. So I wonder, and this is just a theory, and it's not like so it's not an excuse, but it's just an explanation. Would be that they were thinking like, well, because if they have a big argument, then it's like Rooster's going to have to actually make some substantive points, but there's no real substantive points he can make because it's just like Tom Cruise was just there when Goose died.
No, but that's the thing, though. You're saying there's no substantive points he can make. That doesn't really matter because it's an emotional argument he's making. Like he's like obviously he misses his father, and it's like, oh, he's not thinking logically. He's going at him, and perhaps in a melodramatic way, but it doesn't need to be. He's like saying, oh, you I've been a pilot. You knew that there was a risk in doing what you did, etc., etc. Like, yeah, the report clears you, but having been a pilot, you were responsible, and you feel guilty, and that's where the argument could have led.
Here's what I would do if it were me, and this is what I think would be a better situation, would be, instead of having the conflict be about Rooster blaming Tom Cruise for his dad's death, I think it should actually be that Rooster, he's not thrilled about the fact that his dad's dead, and he's not super stoked about Maverick's presence because he's aware that Maverick was, like it kind of brings up those negative memories and stuff. But I think actually it should have been almost entirely about Maverick not wanting to risk Rooster's life because of the fact that he knows that Goose died, so he's like, I can't let Rooster die.
That just makes it more boring. What you've done, you've just made it more boring.
I prefer it. No, I would like that more because
the dynamic.
I think it's more interesting if it's based in more rationality.
Oh, you think that makes...
Which I know is a very autistic thing.
No, that makes everything super interesting when it's based in rationality. No, again, you've kind of proven my point by saying that. The thing, Rooster needs to have this like emotional I guess, reaction.
Well, what I'm thinking is he can have an emotional reaction, because he can have an emotional reaction where he's basically saying like, and he could even like maybe touch on the idea of like Tom Cruise being responsible for it. I should say Maverick, but whatever, it's fine. It's Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise being like responsible for it, but it's not like so. Like what I'm imagining is a situation where Tom Cruise is reluctant to get Rooster involved in anything because he doesn't want Rooster to die because obviously he has that connection with Goose, and this causes Rooster to be more and more resentful, and he's getting angry about it, and eventually it spills over into Rooster being like, what's your problem? You know, let me go out there, blah blah blah. And then like maybe Tom Cruise is like, no, I'm not gonna do it because you're dad. And then maybe you could have Rooster be like, you know, what's the matter? Like basically implying like the fact that Tom Cruise is refusing that to happen is him tacitly admitting guilt in that regard. So it's more like if I were to have the whole "you were the reason why my dad died" thing, I'd have it more on like a cherry on the cherry Bakewell, where the main focus is Tom Cruise feeling uncomfortable about Rooster, being like, I don't want to put him out there, and that obviously annoys Rooster because he wants to be out there. And then the idea that Tom Cruise is like responsible for Goose's death isn't. See, saying rational does make it sound, but what I mean is it's not
also need
accurate enough to be the basis of like a conflict that I would want to get invested in.
You also need Rooster's character arc, though. That's the thing. You also need a character arc with Rooster, and that is him being less. Which this movie does. I don't think it executes it that well. But you also need him to be less, I guess,
of a Grumposaurus Rex.
Yeah, less risk averse, more risky. And if the storyline that you created just then is him constantly wanting to take risks and Tom Cruise denying that, and so therefore at the end of the movie when he's like, no, I am going to take a risk. Again, it could be executed better, and I am going to fly really fast. Well, that wouldn't really make sense in terms of a big moment because throughout the movie he's been like, yeah, I am this guy who wants to take risks. So you got to consider that as well. And yeah, I do think that in terms of like Rooster having animosity towards Tom Cruise, Maverick, that also I think makes things more interesting because that dynamic right away is interesting with, Tom Cruise has to teach the guy who doesn't like him. That is naturally interesting instead of just, instead of that not being the case. So I do understand where you're coming from, but I just think, they went down the right path with what they were doing. They just needed to execute it better.
They did have more of a forceful confrontation. Yeah, I think the area we both agree on is I think we both want it there to be that big blow up.
Yeah,
and there wasn't really. I'm trying to think there was. It's kind of the funny thing is literally, I saw the movie yesterday for the most recent time, and because someone rescheduled, and my memory, I can't actually really remember the kind of final moments of the Rooster Tom Cruise beef. Like I can't really remember. Do they have like a conversation?
No. This is the problem. So obviously Tom Cruise has this kind of semi-argument with Rooster, where Rooster's basically like, "Oh yeah, you screwed up or whatever." When of course the two pilots hit those birds and they have to eject, and that brings back back to bad memories for Rooster. Oh, that's how his dad died, and he has a go at Maverick, and then Val Kilmer dies, I think, and then Maverick gets kicked off the mission. Then he gets back on the mission. And then the next time I think he has a conversation with Rooster is, I want Rooster to be by my side for this mission. So again, that's what I'm talking about in terms of there needs to be a better blow up, and there needs to be.
So they literally just don't really kind of they don't really end it at all.
Yeah, the dynamic
it's not resolved.
Yeah, exactly. The dynamic is on the right path, I believe, but they need to execute it better. There needs to be more scenes. There needs to be better, hashing it out throughout the movie, And again, the resolution is just kind of like, oh, so now he's picking Rooster. Okay, that's weird. Again, I don't think that is executed well. So let's talk about Iceman. So yeah, of course he has terminal cancer, Michael, like Val Kilmer in real life, and he says, it's time to let go. That's what he says to Maverick, and reassures him that the Navy and Rooster need Maverick. This I think is a heartwarming scene, of course, but. Like, I'm just thinking, why does the Navy need Maverick, according to Iceman? Like, I get why Rooster could use him, be a father figure, etc. That makes sense. But, Maverick needs to let go of that guilt he feels, I guess, over Goose's death. But why is this guy the best naval teacher, according to Iceman? Does he believe, like, the Navy is too woke and needs like an old school guy like Tom Cruise to go in there and be a teacher? Does he believe that like John Hamm's going to get those guys killed because he doesn't care about them and Maverick does care about them? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know why why does Iceman really want Tom Cruise to take this job? Maverick.
Really, I mean, obviously it's just because they're friends, I guess. Like, that's it. But also, I mean, the point about like he really cares about keeping people alive, whereas this other guy doesn't.
He doesn't know that, of course.
Yeah, he doesn't really know that, I suppose. But maybe he like senses, like some way, like insofar as he's kept in contact with Tom Cruise, he like Maverick. He remembers, oh, this is the kind of guy who. But again, I suppose, see, it's a very. I mean, obviously, we point out it's kind of propaganda, or no, it is propaganda. This idea of like the military is this very caring organization. If we're imagining not only does Tom Cruise really care about making sure that everybody makes it back alive, but also, the kind of
I can believe
Iceman, who represents it at an institutional level, is also like, no, we need to get this guy in there because we can't have any of these kids die.
Well, yeah, again, I don't think he actually thinks that, of course. I don't think Iceman's like, oh yeah, we've got to save the kids, because there's no reason for him to suspect that the kids are or they're like fully grown adults, obviously, these pilots. But yeah, obviously they're a lot younger than Tom Cruise, as is pointed out many times. I don't know why Val Kilmer was like, no, the Navy needs you. Maybe Iceman was always thinking, oh well, maybe that's the thing. Tom Cruise, fucking Maverick, of course, at the end of the movie isn't a teacher. He actually does the mission, and so maybe that's what Iceman is thinking. Like, no, eventually Maverick will do this mission. He's so good that eventually they'll just put him on this mission. So there you go. Maybe that's the answer. So Iceman, of course, dies soon after, and this the F-18, of course, crashes in training. It's the F/A 18F, by the way. Cyclone removes Maverick as instructor. And I guess this is because there is nobody to support Maverick in a position of power now, so John Hamm can take over, I guess. I don't think the jet crashing was a part of it, because obviously that wasn't Maverick's fault, that was the birds. So of course he relaxes the mission parameters so they are easier to execute, but makes escape much more difficult. And it's a clever way of being the antagonist, this John Hamm character.
Yes, I do like that.
Yeah, it's clever because he is making it more likely, the pilots, the people we like, will die, but not in an evil way, like a practical, hey, we've got to think of the mission first way. But you are, it is cynical as well, and he understands that, Like, he doesn't have an answer to Maverick when Maverick says, well, they got to get home as well. I can't believe, by the way, Maverick does care about getting these guys home, because he is a Maverick, Like,
yes.
So it's like, okay, and he can be different to other institutionalized people in the US military, you understand. But yeah, I like the fact that he's this villain, and it's a clever way for him to be the antagonist without him being really evil,
Yeah, absolutely. I do agree. Like, I think that being the conflict, and I mean, it's really interesting because obviously we kind of spoke about, who are these people who have the uranium, blah, blah, blah. The funny thing is that one thing we didn't really acknowledge is it's really profoundly unimportant who this rogue nation is that has this uranium, because the main conflict is entirely on the side of the good guys about how do you carry out this mission and what priorities. And like you say, like, obviously you don't even think of him as a villain, but as far as like, giving the movie really unironic praise, everyone talks about making villains relatable, and isn't Thanos relatable because of his stupid idea to kill half the population and things like that. Thanos is fine, but like, it's, he's considered a really good example of a great villain. But in this case, you can completely understand where the villain, again, it's weird to even say villain, but where the antagonist is coming from here, because you can understand someone being like, no, the most important thing is making sure the mission's successful. This is the army, people are going to die. And you can completely understand Tom Cruise saying, no, it's possible to do this in a way where they can succeed in the mission and come home. It's just like both sides. It's actually very strong writing, just completely unironically, not just like, oh, it's a dumb action film or whatever. No, it's really well done.
Yeah, that's a good point. So during Cyclone's announcement, of course, Maverick makes a flight through the course with even stricter parameters than the original, and hitting the target without a wingman, proving it can be done. So despite the act of insubordination, Cyclone appoints Maverick as team leader. I think this moment needs a bigger build-up, honestly, because John Hamm has told them, the mission parameters have changed, and then 30 seconds later, Maverick is there. Give me a 3-minute scene of the pilots being despondent, and then Maverick comes in to save the day. And I just felt like it happened too soon. You need that. Yeah. So that's bad movie.
Yeah, I think the scene in itself was good, and it's like, oh yeah, Maverick is showing, like,
oh yeah,
that's a good moment. But yeah, I agree with you that. Obviously, the more build-up, the more satisfying it would be.
I was shocked how little build-up there was. Yeah, it's very unsatisfying. It's like John Hamm says, we're changing things, and then, oh, Maverick's here to save the day. It's like, give me a bit more time, to soak, the changing dynamic in. So yeah, the moment's even better. But yeah, I think it was kind of obvious. Obviously, Tom Cruise was going to save the day. Maverick was going to save the day, because Maverick, and not Tom Cruise, has to show these younger pilots, that how to do it. And yeah, the thing is, there is maybe a slight nitpick here. I think the thing is, in the movie, Maverick would have actually done this sooner if this, thinking about in real life if this scenario happened. But the movie needs him to do it.
It was like a big climactic, or not climactic, like last minute solution.
Yeah, to prove a point, because all the pilots are like, oh, this is so hard, can we do it? Is it impossible? So obviously then Maverick would be like, well, I'm the teacher, so I'll show you guys how to do it. And he'd be perfectly within his rights to do it. And he'd be like, okay, this is how you do it, so you can't...
But he only does it like right at the last second.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. I was like, he probably should have done this and would have done this before now to show people this is how you do it. So anyway, it is a great movie moment though, and it's executed very well. All of the pilots are on edge, and Tom Cruise, he refuses to die, just like the Boomers. He refuses to die.
Yes.
He keeps coming back, and he has to be the main man, has to be the star of the show. Then of course Maverick flies the lead jet for the final mission, and he picks Rooster. Why did he pick Rooster?
Because of stupid reasons.
Well, exactly. This is what we were talking about before. There needs to be a reason. Was he the most impressive pilot? I don't know. We never see that, do we? We never really see how good he is compared to Hangman, or what was that woman called?
Michelle Rodriguez.
It was Phoenix. That was I remember. So that again, that's an area of the movie which is disappointing, honestly. The dynamic could have been better between Rooster and Maverick. It really could have, and it could have made the movie so much better than it was. Because of course that's the key to this movie, that relationship, that dynamic.
It's about family.
Yeah, it's about family. Yeah, and God, it's just like it's even the last scene together before they get in the planes. It's just like, sir, no, we'll talk after, and then Maverick says no.
We'll talk. Yeah, when we get back. Which obviously, there's like a nice or kind of a bittersweet moment there in terms of it's like, oh, I hope they do get back. Although of course you could anticipate they would, but it's like, it has that role of kind of being like, oh,
it's cliche.
They need to get back.
It's cliche. It's like, we'll talk. We'll both get back here. Don't worry. And then he says, oh, you got this. It's like, this. It's such an interesting dynamic you have created with the setup. And it's just like, you don't fulfill its potential, and it's frustrating. So the jets launch from an aircraft carrier, and Tomahawk cruise missiles, of course, destroy the nearby airbase as the jets approach. The team destroy the plant, but the SAMs open fire during their escape. We'll get on to what happens after, but I do like how the mission is communicated throughout the movie. We, the audience, know exactly what is happening, why drones are, irrelevant, unnecessary, etc., why you need pilots, and why you need jets. And of course, we know what the pilots need to do. We know exactly what they need to do. That's what I was thinking. Obviously, they go up the canyon, they do a twist. Of course, they have to stay in the valley.
Yes.
Then they go up the canyon, have to do a twist, fire on the target, and then get out and do 10 Gs while they zoom above the cliff. And that's great, honestly.
Yeah. So you're touching on the thing that I also really, really liked. The fact that they have this film be centered around this very clear mission.
Yeah.
Is the first thing, where it's like, this is what it's about, and that's established very early on. It's like, okay, everything kind of falls into place around that. And then, like you say, the fact that everything they need to do is laid out, I think it just makes it, I guess, one of the big benefits is that it allows everything else happening to kind of be properly located in the story, because you know what the main thing is. So with everything else happening with the romance stuff and the different interpersonal conflicts, to whatever extent that is actually a good thing that you're invested in, it all works better because you know what the main plot is, and you're like, okay, so I know what the main plot is, and they've got a timeline for everything. So I think I liked that, because when it's a good skeleton for the movie when it's all very clearly laid out.
Yeah.
And the plot kind of, they say look after the pennies and the pounds will look after themselves.
Yeah. No,
Well, this is a case of look after the pounds, which is the plot, and then you're free to just worry about the pennies.
Okay. Right, I don't know about that, but yeah, I think we know what the stakes are. And so when we're seeing them perform, again, it is, people have pointed this out, it's very similar to A New Hope. But I think you're so entranced.
I know, I've never heard that analogy before, but yeah, that makes complete sense.
You serious? You never heard that?
Yeah, I've never heard anyone say that this movie's like A New Hope, even though obviously it is, because they got to Yeah,
Byron.
you're right.
Yeah, and of course,
although it's better because the New Hope, you just got that one scene where like, oh, this is what you got to do, but here, they're building up the whole time.
Yeah, again, it's simpler in A New Hope. There are more elements to this, and but even the fucking Rooster's equipment breaks. The young Padawan's equipment breaks, and he has to use his instincts to hit the target.
Yeah. Use the Force.
And it's amazing to watch. It is a really great scene. Like the plane zooming under that bridge. It's such a cool shot. I say the plane zooming, the jets flying. To use the proper terminology. Yes. The thing is, of course, it's great, but yeah, that enriched uranium, didn't count on the good old USA and its cool, handsome pilot. Just did it. That rogue nation, doesn't know who they're dealing with. So Rooster, of course, runs out of countermeasures, and Maverick sacrifices his plane to protect him. All jets are ordered back to the carrier, but Rooster disobeys and returns to find Maverick ejected and is, of course, being pursued by a helicopter. And yeah, Maverick needs to be in trouble for longer. Again, I don't know. It just felt like he was in trouble for like 10 seconds, and then he's saved by Rooster.
Yeah. See, I'm not sure. I think actually, in a way, towards the end of the film, I was kind of okay with how rapid fire.
No, it's just that moment.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because I was going to say we're going to get onto something in a second where that's like relevant, which we're almost. I'll bring it out when we get to it. I'll just let you continue to recap.
No, I was just talking about that specific moment. I was like, so because it's an interesting scenario here because Tom Cruise is out of the plane, or Maverick is out of the plane.
Yeah, he's like 80 years old.
Yeah, and that's the thing. He's like on hostile territory without a jet. Oh, this is a new dynamic we didn't see in the original Top Gun. And this is a dynamic we maybe didn't expect. Oh wow, how is he? Okay, this is interesting. How is Maverick going to get out of this situation? And it's a helicopter sees him and immediately, he's saved. It would just have him run around a bit more. Just have him, maybe the helicopter doesn't get to him right away. Just to build the tension before that.
Yeah,
moment.
like they definitely could have made even more out of the movie.
Yeah,
but the movie's not short, of course. But yeah,
no. I'd be fine if it was a bit longer. It's 2 hours and 5 minutes. Make it 2 hours and 20 minutes. I think that would be fine. So yeah, and I think there's some good stuff they can add in to make it better. After destroying the gunship, Rooster, of course, is shot down by a Sam, and ejects. And the two rendezvous and steal an F-14 from the damaged airbase. Look, the rest.
Yeah, so this is the bit where I was like, this is a bit like. Because it's like, getting into an airbase, surely that's going to be quite a challenge. And it is quite funny. It just cuts to them looking at, a wide shot of the airbase, and next thing you know, they're in the hangar. Well, which obviously makes sense because everybody's all kind of distracted by all the stuff going on.
The thing is, of course, they bomb the airbase, which is, I was thinking, well, why is there so much focus on them bombing the airbase? It's for this reason, right? It's for this reason. So they can, escape through the chaos. Because, there's dust everywhere. There's people running. It's all chaos. Nobody's going to think, there's two guys running. Wait, do they look a bit white and American? No, nobody's going to think that. Because, nobody...
They're going to be like, hey, do those guys look a bit white and American to you? And then one of the people's going to be like, why is that a problem? Everyone here has got an ambiguous race.
Good point. So I was surprised the first time I saw it, they're going into this F-18. Well, that's a cool thing that I didn't expect. That isn't. Well, I guess it is kind of cliche in some respects, but it is different to a lot of the rest of the movie because I don't know. I was surprised by it. But I didn't expect that.
Yeah. I was thinking this was like an extra thing.
Yeah, and again, given the circumstances, of course, it makes sense. When they were on the ice. Or not on the ice, in the snow. I didn't think, how are they going to get out of this situation? Oh yeah, of course they're going to steal a plane. But I wasn't thinking it at the time because, of course, the original Top Gun didn't have that dynamic, and this movie, and there's been no talk of let's steal an enemy plane if we get shot down. Obviously it ends with a Rooster behind Maverick, just like Goose used to be back in the good old days. So that makes sense. And of course, Maverick and Rooster destroy two intercepting jets, but a third attacks and they run out of ammunition. And Hangman then arrives in time to shoot it down.
That's the real hero.
Yeah, I don't know, Hangman being the hero at the end of the movie, I don't know. It just, I didn't really like that, honestly. I'm like, why does he get to be the hero? Why?
I kind of I guess, so the reason I like it is because I kind of already said, I like douche characters.
But the main hero...
I think it's one of the reasons why I like Professor Snape.
The ultimate hero at the climax of the movie. Not he shoots down another plane to help them, and then, there's one more plane that Maverick and Goose have to shoot down.
No, I think I am still okay with basically just because I guess the way I would look at it is it's kind of it's more like it's the release of the tension. So I guess what I'm thinking is it's the way that the tension is released ipso facto it makes sense that it's kind of this guy who's a bit like of a cocky, like, flyboy who doesn't really take things seriously. So it's kind of like, hey guys, are you worried? Don't worry about it.
He can help, just not the last fucking plane that saves the day. That releases all the tension. Anyway, so, again, the ending is just like, who the fuck cares about the odds? You have this old F-14 that's 40 years old.
Yeah, never tell me the odds, 3PO.
Yeah, exactly. And, don't think, do, which is something they say like 1,000 times, even though it doesn't really make sense, but whatever.
I like the bit where they say do or do not. There is no try.
Yeah, and I like how, of course, this thing's 40 years old. Just like, Tom Cruise is a lot older, obviously. He's like 60.
Yeah.
Oh, this thing...
But his career is 40
This thing is ancient. This thing is a fossil. This thing should be in a museum. That's what Rooster's saying about Tom Cruise. No, he's saying it about the plane, but of course there is that symbolic, connection, that theme. Oh yeah, never count out the old guys or the old technology. Just like you should never count out the Tom Cruise and the Boomers. So what a movie moment at the end, as would of course you would expect. So let's conclude. Michael, you go first.
Yeah. So I think pretty much we already have kind of said everything that we really wanted to say. Like, this is an example of where I feel like our discussion was sufficient such that a conclusion isn't that necessary, apart from repeating pretty much what I said in the introduction, which is that the movie is everything you would want it to be. It's a really fun, solid action movie. I was genuinely being like I was feeling basically especially with regards to the action. I think the action was really strong, and part of that is helped by knowing what's happening and all being built up. And I said to you beforehand, I wish I had watched the original Top Gun, because my memory is the original Top Gun had much less of a clear focus, and in that regard, this is much stronger. The interpersonal stuff is, I think, a mixed bag. Some of it's good, some of it's a bit less good, so I would agree with you. I think the Rooster stuff isn't as strong, but I do like Hangman, some of the fun personalities, Bob, the real hero. I wish he would have been the person who shot down the final plane. Overall, I think I'm going to give it a 8, maybe a high 7, I'm not sure, but like I'm thinking a low 8 just because it is such a solid action movie. Again, I've seen this movie twice before. I would happily watch this movie again.
Yeah,
and for quite simple action movie, that's because I'm gay.
Yeah, you like those feel good movies. That's what I was going to say. But okay, if you want to say you're gay, that's fine. You gave it's an 8. I think I'm not going to give it that. I'm not going to make it that good. I'm not going to rank it that high. I'm just going to say it's a. I was debating between a 7 and a 7.5. I think honestly, the practical effects, how good it looks, and obviously the real jets, that has to bump it up to a 7.5. That's the thing, because it's so impressive what they did, I think we've been through this movie. I think there could have been it had potential. It could have been better, particularly Rooster's character. That is the issue. But some good old-fashioned US military propaganda, which we love to see. More movies used to be like this back in the day. Now the US propaganda movies are like Captain Marvel, which has a woman.
It's basically like half those war criminals should be women.
Yeah.
No, if I'm going to see some people unilaterally invade another nation's sovereign territory and kill a bunch of people, I want them to be men.
Yes, exactly. That's how it used to be, so clearly. So what are we doing next time, Michael?
Well, I'm afraid to say it's a considerable downgrade. We're going from a movie with a whole load of white men to a movie where we have a lot of Chinese people instead. It's probably, are they actually Chinese?
It's everywhere, everything, all at once.
Okay, yeah, I was going to do, you know what, so this is obviously not getting included, but just imagine I did this because it'd be really funny. Well, we're going to be reviewing a classic movie, I'm not going to say that.
So join us for that.
Because that would be racist.
So join us for that next time. Who have you been, Michael?
I've been Michael.
Thanks for listening and goodbye.
Goodbye.